Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 62 of A Letter to the King. If you're new to Naval Action's Letter to the King series, really it's me trying to keep you up to date with what's going on PvP-wise. And henceforth, I will be reporting on the non-stop action that is the global server. And of course, we are Wipus Completus. The wipe finally came. They said it was going to be on Friday. They were little trickers because I think they did it on the Wednesday or the Thursday. So all my plans to pull sickies went wrong. And we've had a week. Don't know. We've had 4 or 5 days since the wipe. So let's get stuck into things and stuff. So first of all, great news really. The EU server smashed it with over 1,000 players at peak, and even now they've got 900 odd and 1,000 getting stuck in there. Global 350, they didn't really do a server merge and move things around. They just kind of renamed one of the servers into global. Now, if you're in that EU time zone, sort of based between London and say longitude-wise Rome, you've got yourself a smashing bit of game to play. Global at 350, I was a little bit worried, but I have to say it has been great fun. The guys I've been sailing with anyway, we've been having a ball, and I'll get stuck into that a little bit later. The interesting thing, however, is, let me just bring this up because I want to use this in a moment. The interesting thing is though, if you're in my time zone, I'm in the oceanic southern hemisphere time zone, you'll see that this sort of thing happens. So you'll see with the Euro server, it smashes number-wise the global server. In fact, the sort of low Euro numbers are about the same as the global numbers, but the global numbers stay about the same all day. They move between 350 and 200 pretty much throughout the day, or they have done for these first few days. Very hard to tell if this is a surge or a foundation. So of course what you find is if you're a happy Euro player, this is just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. 1,000, given I'm on global, I'm super jealous of this. Whereas us global nobbies, we pretty much stick to our even numbers throughout the day. But outside of the peak period, what you'll see is this. They're all pretty much the same. Low is below 500, so they're all pretty much the same. So for me, the start and end of port battle or RVR times on the Euro server is 3 AM to 8 AM, and as much as I'm a dedicated nobby, that's just a little bit not happening for me. Whereas my peak time's pretty good. We get about 300 to 350, and the Americans, as I'm coming off, the Americans are coming on, or the other way around, I can't work it out. That's probably where the peak time is. So, great news really. That's heaps of people, and so many people coming back to the game who haven't played it for 6 months and 9 months. We've got a real surge going on right now, so I call on all of us to let's try and build on this and not make this a excitement peak that just tapers off back to Pants Town. So my recommendations is we don't bag the other server. It's very easy for the global guys to look at the sort of tea time gamers who are playing on the Euro, and it's easy for the Euro to lol at the piddling numbers, in their opinion, that they're seeing on global. But honestly, between us, we've got 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 folks at the various peaks, which means there's a background count probably of 3 times that many players during the day. So this is fantastic news. I personally would still like to see a global game that addresses the time zones and is all on one server. The devs seem to have ruled that out at the moment. People seem to think it's an intractable problem. There's plenty of MMOs out there that have managed to solve this with various ways of managing different sectors or portions of the map that might be available for different time zones to play in, or different ways of controlling when things can happen. I think it's fair to say that every player should be able to play in RVR, but at the same time, when you're in your bed having a sleep, you shouldn't lose all your shit. So that's one for the game designers. In the meantime, let's have fun with the servers we've got. I noticed a bit of poaching was going on yesterday, with folks jumping over from one server to the other, telling folks to move. I think that's a bit not good, personally. And let's just let our communities grow and move around. The numbers tell us, and they tell the devs, we want to play naval action. This is the biggest surge of numbers they've had in probably 12 months. I think all of us know that this is hardcore at the moment, and it's can be a bit off-putting if you lose your shit and you're sort of back to day zero. Now, I used to play Elite Dangerous, and before that a few other games that were rather cruel on you. And I sort of personally don't mind it, but I do worry about the noobs who lose the trader's brig in the first day and then they're a bit knackered as to how to trade yourself back into glory. What you'll find is that in the second and third and fourth and fifth week of the new incarnations, as shipbuilders begin to build ships, you'll find that the trader ships begin to appear back on the markets, because at the moment the only trader ships you can get are player built ones. And as they begin to reappear on the market, it won't be such a crushing blow to lose your trader ship. I lost my trader's ship. I made a lot of money before I lost it, but when I lost it, it was like, oh dearie me. Because no one had had a shipyard built yet. Thankfully, I've got a shipyard now and I'm knocking out trader ships, so all is good. A bit of a shock that the LGV's had its hull capacity knobbed, so they're very much working on the basis that the LGV is a fighting blockade runner, whereas the trader's brig is a pure trader ship. So they both have the same hull capacity, I think, now, or near enough. I've got the hull capacity mod on, so my trader's brig's at 1600. I think the LGV's got 1600 raw, so it'll be a little bit higher, but given the speeds laden now are within 0.05% of each other, really, if you're going with the LGV, you're going with it because it's got cannons and it can defend itself, where therefore, you know, it might not be the pure trader that the brig is. But anyway, such is life. And for me, not only is the game wiped, but we have to wipe our approaches a little bit. So I'm hoping we can now work with the devs rather than eating them every time they poke their head above the parapet. And let's see if this can be a base we can grow from. Now, I know that's a very optimistic opinion, and you'll all be going, you're an idiot, Jeheil. This is a surge, and inside 4 weeks, it'll be back down to like 11 players on global and 250 on Euro. But we'll see. We'll see, we'll see, we'll see. That's very much up to us to some extent, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So we have a look at the new map, and of course the new map is very Spanish, because the time snap that they take the new map around was at the height of the Spanish dominance of the Caribbean. So we see the pirates pretty much fragmented to these small and shallow island chains around the map. The Cloggies and the French and the Danes and the Swedes really limited to the Antilles, a little bit here off South America for the Cloggies. The French have a couple of far-flung holdings. They're very, very split. They don't have a lot of towns, and the towns they have are super split. And the Brits, of course, are clinging on here around the Bight in the Yucatan, obviously KPR proper, and the Virgin Islands, and a certain amount here of the shallow islands. Cuba is completely Spanish, as is most of the Florida and American Gulf states. So the Spanish really start out at a huge advantage in that they've got massive access to resource, but at the same time a huge disadvantage in that everyone wants to steal their stuff. So it's pretty normal in the first 6 to 8 weeks of a new map for everybody to be bashing the pants Spanish towns. And of course, with the new wipe came a new resource map. So shock and horror for the Brits, there's no coal in any British port other than, and lol devs, this one here right next to the Danish capital. So Road Town has coal in it. Now, apart from the fact that's a 90-minute sail and really a 2.5-hour sail to and fro the British Main, it's next door to the Danes, who've not really ever displayed a great deal of love and friendship for the British for some reason I don't understand. You'd have thought they'd want a good bit of democracy, but no, apparently Danish ways are better. Certainly their beer is. So this is the new map, which we will be biffing over. And let's have a look at where early aggro began on the global server. So the Americans have already started having a little tickle down Florida, as you would naturally expect, given they've got no choice, really. They're building out from a very, very small base. The French know the right thing to do in the Antilles is get rid of the British as quickly as possible, so they've started aggroing just south of their capital. The Swedes have also started aggroing, and they've started putting a bit of pressure on the Boven Winds, the Dutch holding in the north and north of the Antilles here. The Danes are going for the British Virgin Islands. Now, whether or not this is an active campaign or the fact that every time they sail out of one of their ports and they hit a British ship, they raise hostility here, I'm not quite sure. But this is a real problem. I know there's been some horror stories. So quite a few brave British traders, brave and mad, there's a very thin line between the two. They've been trying to make the crazy coal run. And of course, if you do and you come back with 2,000 tons of coal, you're a millionaire, because there's no one else who's got it at the moment, and coal's vital for cannon building and so on and so forth. So a few Brits have made the run and done it successfully, and it's been a glorious moment for them. And a few other Brits have made the run and got killed, and they're sad pandas, because not only have they lost their trader ship, but they've also probably lost most of their money. High risk, high reward, and of course painful failure if that one goes wrong. The Dutch, and I don't know my history very well with the Dutch holdings in the Caribbean, but Caracas must be, I don't know, where was it, where the Dutch first found marijuana or something. But every single campaign I've ever seen, one of the first things the Dutch go for is Caracas. And that seems to be true this time round as well. The Brits, interestingly enough, so they had now obviously I play with the Brits, so I probably know a little bit more about Britishness than the other nations, I should hope so. The Brits had a bit of a philosophical discussion / drunken dribblings. And really to get coal, after speaking to the mods and the devs and saying, did you really mean to give us almost no coal, you bastards? And they said, go get it, go take it. So there's really two choices for the Brits. They could have gone closer to home and had a go at Santiago, or they could go some far-flung area, and they chose to go the far-flung area. Now there's sort of a bit of thinking behind that. Attacking Santiago would allow one of the major forces on the server, the pirates, to eat them. And also it's more likely to be defended by the Spanish. Now we've got no idea what sort of Spanish player base we've got on here, but the cost of failure of taking a port is brutal. Not only would you lose, you know, your active players' fleet of, let's say, indefatigables, because the surprises they've given us, they seem to have some sort of butter-based hull. They're okay for rapidly tagging fleeing ships or grabbing hold of an unarmed trailer. But I got hit by a seagull in one the other day and it took off half my hull. Whereas the indefatigables they've given us are a beautiful bit of boat and well tooled up with their hulls, with their white oak hulls, to give out the biff. So the Brits in the end chose to go for the far-flung attack. and decided to raise aggro around Cartagena. Now, raising aggro, I don't care where it is hard yakka. Because most of us don't have the materials to build lots and lots and lots of hull repairs, you basically have to go out, find one of these mythical fleets that's sailing around the port. Apparently, each capital port should provide 6 national fleets, but of course, those fleets are sailing off, doing bloody trips around everywhere, and we've discovered here that the Spanish fleet is a very advanced fleet, and it's predominantly amphibious, so it spends half its time sailing through forests and across deserts. And you know, it's going into Colombia proper and stuff like this. It's a bit difficult to chase it, really. We need our own amphibious ships, which we don't have. But anyway, once you biff up one of these fleets, you then have to sail back to port to repair. And of course, attacking a far-flung place like the Brits have decided to do here means they have to sail to a free port to repair, which also means they're trapped down here while they're raising hostility, because you can't teleport out of a free port. So this was a monumental effort by the Brits down here. The other hostility that's been raised, as more wisely one would say, the nations raising the hostility have done it like to their next door neighbour from one of their own ports, and this is a far more sensible way of raising hostility. But for the Brits, they felt that having to go for Santiago would result in potential higher ship losses, and they might not end up winning the port. And the intention was to guarantee coal for the Brits. So let's see what happened. Oh, and the pirates, bless their cotton socks. So in the first couple of days, no boos were heard from the goose. However, probably by the weekend, the pirates had already said La Navas is playground for us, and they're already eating poor little newbie puppies off KPR, including me, you bastards, where my beautiful brig was eaten about a metre from the entrance to Port Morant by 2 fine pirates in surprises. I was very disappointed by the fort defences not absolutely massacring them as they came in and ate me alive. But anyway, well done, bastards. And that put a dent into my progress, but like I say, thankfully I'd made a bit of money so I could build a shipyard, and now I've got lots of traders' linkses. Try catching them, you bastards. Let's have a look at the actual port battles now. I'd love to report that these were classic, unbelievable, Trafalgar-like exercises, brilliantly managed by the respective fleet commanders, and after a real push and thrust, a cut and a jab, glorious victories were won. But in both cases they were empty ports. The Spanish, it's very, very hard to move your fleets around, so it's going to take a while, certainly on Global. I know on Euro they've already had a couple of full port fights, but on Global with the smaller player community, it's going to take a while before the borders close. So you could imagine, for example, the Cloggies will eat along here over the next couple of weeks. The Brits will fill up wherever they want along here. There's going to be a border. So if the Brits were to attack the Cloggies, or the Dutch were to attack the Brits, they would be contested port battles. I suspect as the Americans come down here, at some point the Americans and the Brits are going to meet. I'm expecting the pirates, they seem to be quite biffy, to start eating land, so that might create a border there. Who knows if the French, the Swedes and the Danes are best mates? We don't know that yet. So I suspect the first contested battles on Global will occur when we get to border wars or resources, because one of the interesting things is with the resources now, we have this situation where, for example, every nation can't have a gold port. There's only 5 or 6 gold ports. You can't have an alliance, and there's 8 nations. So, you know, or 7, 8, 9 nations. 9 nations, 8 nations, 8 nations, and 5 gold ports. So that's going to be trouble, isn't it? So that'll be interesting. Anyway, let's amble along. So the Brits now have a footing down here in Cartagena. And they have access to coal. It's a bit of a bloody sale. Pirates will know it. There will be risk and reward to be had there. And the Frenchies kick the Brits out of Rizzo. and I'm sure they'll turn their attentions a bit south quite soon. So raising hostility is hard. Raising hostility away from your local waters is stupid / very hard. I just like to just tip my hat a bit to the 24 odd Brit captains who worked around Dariana to raise hostility. And as much as I would love to be on the Euro server with 1,000 people, but I'm not playing a game that makes me wake up between 3 and 8 to get involved in endgame. You know, I'm sure you guys who've played World of Tanks or World of Warships or WoW or EVE, if you were locked out at the top 30% of endgame, other than between 3 AM and 8 AM, you too would understand why folks in that situation might choose not to participate. I'm not sure what damage it will do to my lovely YouTubeness or how many people view Letter to the King, but to be honest, I watch the videos myself that I make, and I enjoy my own videos, so that's enough for me. One happy subscriber and viewer. If those of you who play on Euro decide to do your own equivalent, then I'm all for it. I've actually offered a couple of the guys over there. They can have all my materials I use if they wanted to clone, or they can do their own thing. I'm not going to try and keep up with Euro from a reporting perspective because I couldn't do a good job of it. Some would argue I never have. Bastards. I will keep an eye on it and I'll make reference to it. Like I say, a lot of my old friends, or frenemies actually, are on Euro, and I sort of miss them. And I'll miss the, you know, those days of 600 players all bashing around. But my hope is that Global will grow. My hope is that Euro will grow. I'm a dreamer, of course, but those are my hopes, and I hope we can have 2 fun, viable servers. But what really impressed me this week, and what made me probably enjoy it and be less tempted to just jump into the bigger numbers, was the camaraderie. So there's probably 4 British clans. They're all quite small, especially compared to where I was prior to the merge. Well, it wasn't really a merge, but prior to the wipe, is the fact that there were 2 big clans, or not 2 big clans, the 2 main clans down in Dariana, and after every mission they just shared their money around to give other players, not in their clans, and not even preferenced to their clans. They just gave other players money to buy a port, to move from the Butter Surprise to their Biffo Indefatigable. They gave their money out so that people could cannon up, because initially we were all just sailing out with 1 row of cannons on our ships, and quite often not the top caliber that that ship could carry. And it became this sort of happy pyramid scheme, where, you know, one player would set up another player, and then once that player earned 100k or whatever doing missions, he would then set up another player, and so on and so forth. So you had this infectious gratitude going on, so it's really good. I've tried to do my bit as well, because, you know, you pass it on, as it were. But raising hostility is really hard at the moment. For me, it's the #1 thing they have to fix. Well, the #1 thing they had to fix was that when we flipped the ports on Euro, on Global, they didn't actually flip. It was as if they'd left the timers wrong. Now, they say it was a different bug, and bless the devs cotton socks, thank you very much devs, because they did fix it that night, so good on you, because there was a fair amount of salt bubbling after folks had spent 48 hours of hard yakka sailing out for 30 minutes, doing a mission, sailing back, sailing out for 30 minutes, doing a mission and sailing back. The fact that it didn't flip caused a certain amount of sadness amongst community. Port battles, of course, carry an enormous risk, especially early on when we don't have the shipbuilding facilities and we're not knee-deep in resources, and those players who carry nations by building 1 million ships don't exist yet. Because, of course, you lose 25 ships and you won't be in a situation where you can do another port battle. Now, in time, we'll build up buffers, and in time, nations will build up reserves. But, you know, I've seen plenty of players lose, you know, a couple of ships early and you are back to slutting around in a cutter. And it takes half a dozen missions in a cutter on your own to get enough money to maybe buy a surprise off the market, or even a Belle Poule or a Niagara or a brig or whatever you prefer sailing in. And it's hard yakka. I have to say, if you're doing it on your own, if you're not doing it with buddies, I don't know if I should take my hat off to you out of respect or shake my head at you because you're mad, because it's too hard as a solo player. There's never been more of a multi-element in multiplayer than this naval action now. Getting a clan, even if the clan is you and 3 mates, or you and 2 mates, or you buddying up with 3 mates who are already in a clan, if you're doing this on your own, it's too hard. We caught one guy, and this was a tragedy. He was in a surprise, and he fleeted up with his Indy and his brig, his trader's brig, and of course he lost them all. So that's him, absolutely goosed. He's got a pickle and a basic cutter left, and he also had a hull full of French levers or something. So, you know, that's your kit and your caboodle gone. Anyway, raids, I have a dream, I share a dream, that when raids come, you'll be able to raid not the capital, and it will raise hostility by, say, 25%. It'll be like a flag-based attack on the non-capital ports, and it'll be a way of raising hostility. And if you defend it, it will lower hostility, perhaps by 25%, and 25% if you win it, or whatever the number might be. And the sooner we get that sort of thing in there, the better, so that everyone can have a bash, and because this hostility at the moment it's not attractive, right? And these 6 fleets, mythical fleets that are sailing around, first of all, they're hard to find. Secondly, often they're either stupid big or so tiddly it doesn't make a difference. And then thirdly, half of them sail across land. So I catalogued the sightings over 2 hours. And, you know, I think we did some calculations working with us and some other folks. On average, it's 40 engagements that you have to do to cause a port to flip. Now, if players are defending, of course, and so the devs are right with this, if the Spanish had come out to defend and we'd have been doing lots of PvP, apart from the fact we'd have all been back in cutters after about 10 minutes, it would have worked. And of course the other meta at the moment is that if anyone turns up in a surprise, or 2 or 3 people turn up in a surprise, they get swarmed by 700 basic cutters which carry no risk, whereas the poor buggers in the surprise do. But there's a lot of pirates doing some proper pirating, and they carry risk, of course. They can get killed, but great reward to be had. So I do like that part of the game. Where are we now? Oh yes, now, so a call to action for players who don't mind going the extra yard. The Wiki, the Naval Action Wiki, I'll put the link in the description of my video, but it's there. You know, anyone who knows how to use Google can find the Naval Action Wiki. You do find an old one, which when you get to the homepage tells you to come to the new one. But the Naval Action Wiki is horribly out of date. Now all you have to do is log in, create yourself an account, and you can update stuff. What do you mean update stuff, Jeheil? Well, things like the modules. So there's loads of new modules, and look at that, there's no description of them. So even if each of us did 2 updates each, the wiki would quickly become a useful tool again, and it's a very important tool. So please guys, if you've got 20 minutes while you're sailing across the water and you're brave enough to open a wiki on the second screen, because God, you've got to keep your eyes on the water right now, maybe you could have a go at updating the wiki and becoming part of the contributing community. What do you get for it? Nothing. Nothing but the knowledge that you've contributed to the greater good. Now, how excitement. We come to the tally of Splinters, Sail and Blood for the first time in about 3 months. And so this is the starting, this will be true for both servers. This is the starting setup of a brand new map. So we'll see our lovely Spanish fellas own about half of the Caribbean with 181 ports. The British are the next powerful force. The Frenchies and the pirates have a similar holding. And the poor old Americans, Dutch, Swedes and Danes have got stuff all. And on global after a furious week of biffing and bashing. Here's the original, the initial changes. The Spanish lost 4 ports, that's the Cartagena ports, to the British, which the British took, so they should have gained 4 ports. However, the pesky French, damn their eyes and all who sail in them, snapped up HUZZAH from the British, which cost them 3 ports. No one else. Oh, look, that's a mistake there. That +6 and -6. That's a hangover from previous stuff. Forget that. I'll beat people up in the editing suite. So that's the where we are, and I'd imagine these symbols are probably wacko as well. Look at that. Yeah, the symbols are wacko. I'll fix the symbols next week. So that's it for this week's naval action. I'm toing and humming about whether or not I should do some post-wipe how to make money videos. I was rather hoping to wait until the new UI came in, but I think it's worth doing. It's not easy to make money, but there are ways of making money, and there are methods to the madness too. So I might do a post-wipe how to make money, as if you're starting again from your basic slutter on upwards to earning 400,000 for a run. So I'll have a go at doing that, because we all like to make money. And I might also talk about, now there's a new combat system in, and it's a bit brutal. I might do one on how not to die as much. I do not claim to be a #1 player. There's plenty of guys out there who'd kick my average ass. But I do know what you're meant to do. I'm just probably too old to do it properly, or too unskilled. Anyway, that's it for this week's naval action. Much excitement. I've had a great week. It's my first week of really getting stuck back into the game. I've made some new friends. I've annoyed some people who really didn't know me. They now know why they are glad they didn't know me. And I've settled in to the somewhat smaller world of global, but I've settled into a server that I know that if I create a port battle, I'll be able to participate in it, and that's what's important to me. And I am very excited to see the Euro server with 1,000 players, over 1,000 players at peak. I think that's fantastic, and I hope it goes from strength to strength. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. I'll see you on the ocean, and I'll catch you.